Hello all, today we will discuss a quick overview of the Great Depression and World War II. The essential questions that we will focus on include: what has the United States done to counteract the Great Depression, as well as how did the Great Depression affect the United States' involvement in World War II? The most commonly accepted begin date for the Great Depression is October 29, 1929. This is the date of the stock market crash. The stock market crashed due to, in part, by the effects of buying on margin, which is relatively the same as buying on credit, meaning that people would purchase items with the intent to pay it off later. The effects of buying on margin include tremendous debt that was caused by the purchasing of more items than they had the money to pay off. Chaos ensued following the stock market crash due to fear and panic that overwhelmed the Americans, in which they would storm banks to withdraw all of their money. That directly correlated to banks being forced to close down, banks running out of money, and panic spreading throughout the entire nation. President Herbert Hoover, who was in office during the time, receives the majority of the blame, not only for the Great Depression, but for the conditions that followed. Quick quiz. In what year did the stock market crash, and what does it mean to buy on margin? Reflecting on the previous slide, we can see that the stock market crashed on October 29th, 1929. This was due in part by the effects of buying on margin, which is relatively the same as buying on credit, meaning that people would purchase items with the intent to pay it off later. Reflecting back on President Hoover being blamed for the Great Depression and the conditions that followed, we look closer in on the living conditions of those that were impoverished. They lived in communities commonly known as Hoovervilles, which were constructed of shack-like shelters that people were forced to live in after they lost everything due to the Great Depression and stock market crash. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president that brought hope. He utilized reforms to lessen the already extreme impact of that the Great Depression had on the nation, and he also did little things that comforted Americans, including fireside chats. These were his nightly conversations with the American people that he would have over the radio. He would talk to the Americans and make them feel more secure and give them a better feeling of trust into the nation after losing everything after the stock market crash. Quick quiz. Who was blamed for the Great Depression, and what were fireside chats? Herbert Hoover received the majority of the blame for the Great Depression because he was in office at the time. And fireside chats were a radio conversation between the President FDR and the American people, in which he would sit down at the end of the day and have a conversation with the Americans, and keep them up to date on what's going on and what he's doing to help the situation, help improve it. All right, World War II lasted between 1939 to 1945, while the United States didn't enter until later on into the war. Though many perceive the attacks on Pearl Harbor as the sole reason for the United States entering into the war, it was also due to pressures coming from outside countries. Many countries were running low not only on supplies and money, but on soldiers as well, and needed that relief from the United States. We were brought into the war by President FDR. And to give a quick comparison between President Hoover and President FDR, I'm going to cut to the Animaniacs really quick, which is a cartoon that in this particular episode discusses all the presidents. I'm only going to let you listen to 2. However, you can go to the link that's on the screen and watch the full video if you'd like.
In 1929, the market crashes and we buy Herbert Hoover's big day.
All right. If you go to the video, then you'll be able to see the graph that shows the decline, the economic decline that resulted from the stock market crash. And at the bottom of that graph, there is a picture of Hoover, President Hoover, which shows him in a very negative light and as the person who receives the blame for this economic distraught that the nation was brought to. However, on the following scene, you see President FDR in his wheelchair. However, the wheelchair has plane wings and he's flying. It shows him more as a hero who leads us into World War II and prepares the nation for another war. Quick quiz. Who brought us into World War II, and what did World War II begin? Or when did World War II begin? Sorry. As noted in the previous slide and in the Animaniacs video, President FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, brought us into World War II, and it began in 1939, while the United States didn't enter until a little later. Here are all the links if you would like to look for more information on what was found or watch the video. Thank you very much. Have a great day.